My specialty is budget and technical, but there is also the part which I learned quickly about, especially on a show as complex as Mandalorian, and that is schedule. Sort of the unsung part is the incredible lift is scheduling all of the things, all the different departments that need to be scheduled properly when everyone is grabbing for everyone's time. I relied heavily on my colleagues in post. Judith Babcock, in particular, is the one who brought me into The Mandalorian. And we had worked together at Disney and at Netflix. And so basically, everything needs to get pulled together in terms of the content, both in video and audio, on time, in spec. And scheduling is really important part of that. The technological chops that I have allowed me to present these technical solutions, which were partly being demanded by the showrunner. So the job is really be prepared to present options at all times. And those options include how you want to shoot, how you want to review, and how you want to cut. Also, how you want to color, and how you want to mix. All of those are in the job description. On The Mandalorian, we had an on-set editorial request. So now we actually have to have a place for people to run to in between shots to have editorial discussions. So that will really pull a post super onto set. Also, you're part of in a digital world, post is part of the camera prep. If done correctly, you will be in lockstep with the DP, who is doing their level best to work with their new technologies, the volume in particular, and coming up with a look of the show, which they'll put into the camera, and then making sure from that point everything coming out of the camera is accommodated through the DIT and into the daily system. And there's another quick little color pass. All of the abilities to affect color properly need to be understood by the post supervisor, and need to be given as options to the camera department and the production general for dailies. And then, of course, producing the dailies to everyone in a quick fashion is a key part of the job during production. You have to be able to draw out your workflow and present it to whoever asks for it when needed. And honestly, it's just those diagrams are minor notes in larger conversations. They indicate intent and how things are connected. But for the most part, the post people have to be, especially in the world we're living in today, have to be very aware of not only what software and what applications they're using, but how all of their different parts are supported over a vast network. So I think that the what's really changed recently is the necessary networking chops you need if you're going to do a large scale sort of well-connected production. You need networking expertise. I think the challenges are going to be the same with any of these digital solutions. That is the centralization of data. That was, a lot of times I'll walk into a place and say, is there any reason why these people can't share this data, that we can't come up with a central repository for the quick delivery of materials? And usually the only thing that's in stopping the movement of this material is control of versioning, and that means that you really have to be careful about how things move forward in the production process because of the approval process needed. And so it's not enough just to say, oh, we need central repository. We also need the protocols in place to make sure that everyone can approve things before they're released to the next department head. So it enables that approval process to happen more quickly. And if set up right, it allows everyone access when they're supposed to have it. COVID and the quarantine allowed those of us who were waiting for us to go into the cloud, because we've been saying in general that it's time to go, but no one was really willing to risk the first steps until we all were forced to make these first steps together. And now the conversation's changed. Now I'm hearing studio executives saying, I really want to be able to allow my editorial teams the ability to go to their child's graduation and still log in from wherever they are to run a very important review process. You know, these sessions that oftentimes are sporadic can be done remotely. I think that there's a real interest in enabling people to have a better quality of life by allowing them to move about a bit and not be completely centered around a single geographical spot. Because we now have been working this way for almost a year, I think certain aspects will forever alter how we're working, and that's because we're connected now. We've proven these connections out. We have felt the pain of these connections, but it turns out we've managed our expectations, and we know what to expect, and it's not such a shock. Everyone's afraid of the shock whenever you're working with something new, because you never know how very important people are going to react. And it turns out that everyone just kind of goes, yeah, well, this could be better, but let's keep going. Because we had been working with our networking teams on onset editorial, I turned to Jude and said, if we need to, we can start to deploy. And actually, I worked with Sohonet at the time, and they have a white glove sort of service, and they were able to not only enable, but even encourage us to get to our respective positions. Where they really came in handy, and where the networking bandwidth became an issue, was we actually mastered from our homes. And that's a challenge, because at that point, everyone needs to see the quality of the final color in Unity. In other words, they need to see it as it's got to be the best that it's ever going to be shown. So we did accommodate one person to go into a controlled area to see the material uncompressed, and that was our DP. And they were there to provide a confidence that if we saw something in what we were seeing in very high bit rate streams coming to our homes, all on the same monitors, that if there was an anomaly, someone was there to say, no, it's not really here. But it was amazing. We were able to see the HDR output of the show and deliver it to the studio, feeling confident that what we made was what people were going to see. If you don't like working with other people, you should not be in production. I've always found that working side by side with my colleagues to solve any particular problem was really one of the most gratifying parts of the process. It made for a good rap party. You all got together like a bunch of vagabonds after working closely together for so long. The collaboration is a benefit. It makes you feel good to work next to someone and come up with a great result. That's my expertise, and I think that speaks to more of like who I am. But I can guarantee you there are many like-minded people in the trenches with you, going, "Yeah, this is hard, but we can all be proud." There is an aspect of working together that people have been used to, and that is what I call the coffee break conversation. Right, and in an episodic editorial situation where there are multiple editors, who are all working towards the same sort of feeling of a show. I've watched them walk by each other's offices and say, "Hey, you want to take a look at this thing?" And that little sort of short conversation, which went from the weather to a particular scene, that collaboration, it's not gone, but we have to replace that habit of the coffee break with a new habit of setting this type of conversation up. Just a quick little, you got to make it so that everyone's sort of reaction of like, hey, I really just want to reach out, that they can reach out, that a new normal has to be put into place where people can feel that it's okay just to ping someone and just say, hey, you got a minute? It doesn't feel as natural, as what we were used to. But I think it will evolve over time. The other thing that is rough at the moment, and this will change too, is that the challenges of working on a particular show you can always feel a little bit better by getting away from your workstation, going down to craft service, getting glared at by the producer for, is that all you do is eat? But you look up and there are a group of people standing in front of a camera, all making what they're making. And that revitalizes you. You can take a breath. It's not here right now. It's not here for the producers, and it's not here for the people who support the entire production. There, because the bubble is so small and it has a head count, and you can't break that head count. So I do hear a lot of people say, that it's hard to find that extra energy. You cannot collaborate the way you used to collaborate, right? Everything now has to be slightly more manual and thought about and pragmatic. So that in an inspirational medium, you have to find a way for that inspiration to still be fed in this environment. On The Mandalorian, we had to be in lockstep with just about everybody. Visual effects was the heavy lift on The Mandalorian. It was very interesting to accommodate their needs along with the post needs, because it's such a driver of everything on a show. 5,000 visual effects shots will definitely take up a lot of the resources, and the result, of course, is some of those beautiful visual effects I've ever seen on television. I'd have to say we there wasn't a day where we didn't, especially near the end, where we didn't make sure that VFX, that they had what they needed, and that's a very controlled environment all in itself. That you have to make sure they're supported, but then you have to sort of just step away and make sure everything's smooth. My main job was to make sure that the color space of the show was well accommodated, both in relation to the vision of the DP and Jon Favreau and the entire creative team, but also within the spec of the studio. There's a target you have when you get into mastering, and you got to make sure that you can hit that target. So part of the job there, the most challenging part, was having that conversation at that level, and in a way that made you sort of helpful. Hi, I'm here to help. A lot of people say that, and they're not very helpful. The trick is being helpful, and that's luckily the DP, Baz Adwan, lovely fella, and accepted the help. You weigh the situation as it comes against the needs of the show, right? And you make your decisions based on what does the show need. And if someone wants to fight you on that, then you have to sort of make a different differentiation that, this is your department. You're talking about what your department needs. this is what the show needs, and try and elevate the conversation to that context, and then they can talk to people who because if they don't believe me, then the next thing I can do for them is find someone they can believe. There are artists throughout the entire production pipeline. You can always talk to someone who is not only doing their editorial work, the true storytellers, by the way, the editors, but they also have a band, right? They also have something else, another dream or a vision, right? That they're trying to make come into being. If you can't make your vision happen, right, then you can help others with their visions and enable their visions. So I certainly think I am an artist. I studied art. But I mean, I really do appreciate the medium. Do you know the concept of the shadow artist? They have this this need to create, and if they cannot create themselves for whatever reasons, then they will support those who do. And that's something that has been going on with me since, well, for forever. There were 350 of us in Beverly Hills. I was VP of a DCP house. I was making digital cinema packages, and it just started when I got the call from Netflix. And they said, hey, do you want to help set up a post department? So we went there, and yeah, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew that I was helping to set up the first global IP network on the planet. And I made sure that everyone knew that is, hey, by the way, do you realize how cool this is? This is what you're doing right now, right? Look up, appreciate what you're doing, because this is a moment in time that probably you won't repeat, right? So they accused me of being a stop and smell the roses guy, and I own that. I really appreciated being part of that, and not only just having a front row seat, but actually being able to affect the growth of that studio. You'll never see a company with such a commitment, not in the entertainment space, right? With such a commitment to their employees. We were given no reason to fail. We were given everything we needed, and to sort of couple that with the fact that at its heart it's a technology company. For a guy like me to suddenly turn around and say, I had gone from Disney, where I spent a lot of time convincing people, hey, you can turn that VHS machine off and we can do a lot of this stuff on computers now, to suddenly working with an R&D team at Netflix that by the time I went home after having a conversation with someone working on software, they had already iterated and said, yeah, we took your notes and rolled them into the software. That was new. That was amazing. It was a very exciting time. And it was a constant conversation about, oh my God, do you realize we did 8 originals this year? That's so amazing. Great, now do 16. 16, we could never do that. Oh my God, we just did 40 originals. Yeah, great, now do 100. And that's what we did over 4 years. We went from 8 to, I think, when I left, it was close to 900 originals a year. There it was explaining to people how movies work, and at the beginning being told, no, that's old studio, we're going to do a new way. And so who was I to say that this new way wasn't possible? So you take a beat and go like, great, what are you planning? Are you going to somehow actually make the audio appear before the video? How is this going to work? I'm joking, but there was a constant sort of struggle of 100 years of filmmaking have put in some processes that sort of have to be in place. And for them to learn that, and for the technologists, the developers to actually learn a lot of that. I remember talking with an engineer, bringing up images of key code on the edge of film, saying, you see this number? we've been able to track every single frame, both in terms of its place in a roll of film, but its genealogy, but its place in our cut, and the audio's relation to that frame of film, just by this number. And your software needs to do the same thing. It was fun. It was a lot of fun having those conversations. I remember the first conversation I had was, "This is fantastic." I was working on Pee-wee's Big Holiday, and I was, "Okay, great. Where are we going to put this stuff?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" Like, the original negative. Where are we going to put it? Do you want it on LTO tapes? What do you want? Well, we don't want to go to tape. We don't want to go to media. Great. So where do you put it? Well, normally that stuff, like, that stays at the producing studio where, oh, wait, we are the producing studio. Right. So we would have these, it was that fast, right? And so we'd have conversations that would result in requests for process, which resulted in software like Content Hub, which was an amazing way to deliver a film to a studio. Also, because you're moving so fast, there was no network operations center for the production side. Everyone had to know everything. You had to interpret a contract, understand the languages needed for that contract, and make sure that all your subs, all your dubs, along with the show, right? You were a distribution master. You were a master of distribution, and you were a post producer. There was no difference, and you could control every piece of content through your laptop. You could make it go up, disappear, make the Spanish speak French. You could, and so in a way, through the power of networking and all of us being our own VPN, our laptops were the NOC, at the network operations center. And I think that was the thing that sort of, that concept right there would have made most studios quake. It's just not something that they would rely on a bunch of upstart people to handle. An immense amount of trust in Netflix and its employees. I don't think you'll see a greater commitment to the concept of building a studio than I saw in Netflix. I boil it down to just pointing to the slow part. Being able to identify the challenge is what it turns out that I'm good at, because I understand the workflow, and because I have to deliver on a schedule. I've constantly been aware of where the slow part is. But on top of that, I've always been curious, and so then I'll wonder, well, how can this stop being what is slowing us down? And then you quickly go to, how much would that cost us? And so I'm always ready to tell people, that's your slow part. That'll cost you $80,000 to fix. It's up to you. You can do the calculation on the point of diminishing returns. Disney's accomplishments spread over 100 years. So to ignore that would be ridiculous. So you have to sort of convince people that the thing that they're hung up on is not something that is a core, essential to the company's success. You have to indicate that this new thing is essential to their success. There are certainly people who will say, well, we're doing it this way because this is the way it's done. Concepts like breaking up a feature film into 20-minute chunks so you can schedule it properly in order to do the mix. In a streaming world, that may just get chucked. You may not have any way or desire to do that. So the way people schedule people's times changes, right? So everyone feels the change. Schedules are becoming compacted. Turnaround times have to speed up. So people are always fighting for limited resources, and that's usually time. So if they don't change, then just like everything else digital, it will change around them. You need to see things coming. You need to be, looking at the horizon and understand what's coming over it. You need to be the first person to deliver options to people who need to hear them, which means that you need to see what's going to come down the pike. There are many ways to deliver workflows. They will change based on how people have worked. The terrible thing about technology is that it has created this, every show, every workflow is a snowflake. So that means that you need to be really adaptable. Certain specs need to be in place, others don't. And so you need to accommodate, if a DP suddenly needs to overcrank everything and create an immense amount of footage you didn't know you needed to accommodate, you need to know how that impacts your production storage. You need to be a part of the dailies process if you see something that looks too dark, you actually need to go into the digital negative and make sure that the experts who are going to receive this later in the line are aware of it and ask them if they can, if it's usable. And they need to know immediately, because all that stuff needs to be tracked back to the producer in order to make a decision about whether or not they need to do some pickups or reshoots. So it really is about knowing before everyone else knows. It does attract people who are okay with being sacrificed. It's an odd bird. Your need and love for the show has to supersede sometimes then temporarily at least, your own needs, right? Because the show is everything. It's an aspect of the show must go on type of mentality. You all got to keep going, right? That's the drum that everyone's banging, and everyone gets that, right? Some people will take that on and be completely okay with never being thanked, right? So I make it a point to always be thankful and thank others about their contribution, because that's a rough place to work, if you're doing that. It doesn't speak to a good quality of life. So if you're not going to be thanked, then you should be paid, right? And if you've got neither going, then maybe it was maybe you have to make a decision about whether or not that job is right for you, So I think that it's I certainly got what I need out of post supervision. I would do it again, absolutely. I think it helps. I have seen people work other ways, right? Some people work with a scowl on their face, right? And you just do what they say and get out of their way. I don't work that way. And I'm fine with people who do work that way, because that way they're able to dictate what needs to be done. And it better be right the first time. And I certainly think that there are aspects of that which needs to be in place. Everyone needs to do their job. But I think it's of equal importance to be enjoyable to work with, to make people bond if you can, create an atmosphere where that occurs, and it can be very challenging. Some people don't want to bond, and that is fine. Some people will not like the way one works, and that is fine. It really is. You just need to know what you know, and know that has value. And all I can suggest is that you have to work the way you work, the way you want to work. And even with my colleagues, I've been in many places where I'm like, I'm just going to tell them what's happening. And no, don't do that, and I have to say that 80% of the time that's the right thing to do, and 20% of the time, they never invite me back to the room. I gave them the bad news, right? And there's you have to be willing to if they're going to ask you not to re-enter the room because you told them the truth, and you tried your best to tell it the best way possible. That's just the way it is. So what they're going to find, what will change every single time, are the variables of changing latency for connectivity. And by that I mean do you have your data local, or are you remoting in to someplace where that data is? And that will be a decision you make on an editor by editor basis, based on decisions that are mandated by connectivity, but also mandated by how an editor wants to work. If an editor hits a key and nothing happens for 10 milliseconds, that's going to be a problem. If something doesn't happen in 3 milliseconds, that's probably not a problem. You know, it's there's she's gonna go outside in a minute. You know, she's never bitten anyone, but man, that bark is awesome. So they're going to find that they have to present the options all the time, right? They're going to have to accommodate these options. The safe way to go now appears to be people remoting in to on-premises Nexus. That seems to be the thing that works. People are just sort of managing their expectations about, you know, the feed coming back from the Avid, and making sure that they start to tune their flow on how they, and there is a flow, right? In terms of what you hit on the keyboard when you're in a groove, you know. That is the challenge. And you have to present for the next 2 years. I think if you're going to get into this, you're going to have to make a decision about whether or not your data is local or you're remoting in to get to that data. And again, it'll be a show by show, editor by editor tolerance for that. Yeah, I did. It was on a 9 Inch Nails video in the mid 90s, where we were doing photoreal effects in the 90s at Digital Domain. And it was sort of, you know, one of those office toys. It's like a pin that you put your hand in. Right? So Trent was singing, you know, on that pin thing. And there was a photoreal cup of coffee next to him. And it was amazing work. But yeah, I was the conform guy. And that really was sort of the natural extension, because I was technical assistant. I was in charge of all the rendering, right? Wherever the slow part was, if you couldn't fix it, you put James in there and he would manage it, right? And so there was limited render management. So producers would run up to me and say, I need all the processors in the facility immediately because I got an 11 o'clock, whatever. And you'd go like, well, I can give you 20, you know? So then I got put into the flame chair, and that was basically another way to drive the delivery of effects. So, and I would just drop them in, and I did a little bit of roto. Yeah, so that was about the extent of it. My grandfather's voice is in the original Star Wars. My grandfather was an actor. He was Peter Hobbs, and that whole spiel about how to blow up the Death Star, when everyone's like, you know, this is he actually mispronounces Princess Leia's name. That's Peter Hobbs. That's my grandfather. And I told John that, and he looked at me and said, "You're part of the legacy."